Well, we get started. Emily, you're sort of the master of ceremonies. So why don't you call upon the cast to introduce themselves and where they're from? But most of them know each other, but some don't, and we do have an audience.
So I will call upon the stage manager.
So my name is Arlene Thomas, and I am playing the stage manager who narrates and assumes multiple roles, and I am from Kitchener, Ontario, Canada.
Excellent. And now the Urban Le Verrier, the flamboyant French astronomer.
My name is Mason Mitsevsky, and I'm from Hamilton, Ontario.
And John Couch-Adams, the reserved British astronomer.
Yes, my name is Stephen Baltz, and I'm from Christiansburg, Virginia.
And George Airy, the British astronomer royal.
My name is Brian Otto. I live in Waterloo, Ontario. I'm originally from Brockton, Massachusetts, via Durham, North Carolina.
Excellent. I should mention that all of the actors are playing multiple roles. Le Verrier versus Adams by Dwayne Yancey, copyright 2020, all rights reserved. As patrons enter the theater, each one is given either a small British flag or a French flag.
Oh, nice.
The theater should distribute roughly equal numbers of British and French flags. One patron and only one should be given a German flag. Patrons should be told to wave them when directed by the stage manager. Two people who are given French flags are also given lines to say at the appropriate time. The stage itself need not be elaborate, although there's definitely a chalkboard. The stage manager enters and delivers the curtain speech. The stage manager should be in modern dress. To make it clear to the audience that this is the stage manager, perhaps the stage manager carries a clipboard and wears a headset. During the curtain speech, feel free to improvise some chatter involving the headset. The stage manager should deliver whatever your standard curtain speech. This speech should also address the flags. Here's a suggested line, but feel free to change it.
Now, as each of you came in, the ushers should have given you a small flag. We'll let you know when to wave it. Yes, this is one of those audience participation shows. Sorry about that. We'd have put it in the poster, but there wasn't enough room. Anyway, it's very important that you wave your flag, so don't let us down.
More curtain speech follows. The curtain speech concludes with the line,
"And now we take you back in time to 1846 and a lecture hall in Paris. Ladies and gentlemen, mesdames et messieurs, it is my great honor and high privilege to present to you Urbain Le Verrier."
Urbain Le Verrier, the celebrated French mathematician, enters. He is 35 years old and the scientific celebrity of his age. Le Verrier enters with a flourish. He is thoroughly dramatic and bombastic.
It is the age of discovery. It is the age of revolution. And the most revolutionary instrument of all, radical in its efficiency, absolute in its ability to overthrow the old order, it is not the guillotine. It is the telescope. From the day Galileo first pointed his telescope at the sky, the gates of heaven flung open and tumbled out one new discovery after another. The moons of Jupiter, the rings of Saturn, stars uncountable, new galaxies that stretch out to the distant end of space and time itself. The telescope is the wonder of the age. And yet today, my friends, I am here to tell you that there is an even more revolutionary tool which we earthbound souls can explore the heavens. Mathematics!
Stage manager enters.
Hold, hold, hold.
Le Verrier freezes as if someone has hit pause.
Okay, sorry again. We forgot to tell you, this is a true story. Maybe dramatized a bit, but you know how that goes. We haven't made up anything, but we may have left out some of the boring bits. And no, don't worry, you don't need to know any math. In fact, it's probably better if you don't know any. Some of you may have trouble balancing your checkbook, or perhaps some of you, maybe most of you, rely on a calculator for even the simplest computations. Then marvel at the tale of Verrier and Adams. Or perhaps Adams and Verrier. It really depends on whether you're British or French. How you see this show really depends on which side of the channel you're on. How many of you are French? Let's see you wave your flag. Bien, bien, a lot of French people in the house tonight. You'll like Verrier, a great French hero. His name is even engraved on the Eiffel Tower. How many of you are British? Let's see you wave your flag. Good, good. A lot of British people. You don't like those French people, just so you know. But you will like Adams. He's your guy. Anybody here who's not British or French? Yeah? Oh, what's that? A German flag. We'll come back to you. So, yes, we said this is a true story. It's more than just true. It's the tale of one of the great scientific achievements of all time. By the candlelight of the 1800s, using only pen, paper, and the infinity of the human mind, one of these men discovered a new planet. Or maybe both of them did. You'll have to decide for yourself. They discovered this new planet moving through their equations long before anyone saw it moving through the sky. Working at the problem from two very different angles, completely unbeknownst to one another, these two mathematicians each inferred the presence of an unseen world simply by its gravitational sleight of hand. They calculated its size, its distance, its motion, and eventually, its very location. When Babe Ruth called his famous shot in the 1932 World Series, he pointed to a spot in the bleachers more than 436 feet away. Urbain Le Verrier and John Couch Adams pointed to a spot 2.7 billion miles away. And lo, there it was, Neptune. No one had dared dream of this planet before, and no one has done anything like this since. If you don't know their names, Le Verrier and Adams, then shame on history for forgetting. Every generation has its epic tale of adventure. The Russians and the Americans race each other to the moon. The Americans won. Edmondson and Scott each vie to be the first to the South Pole. Scott froze to death. The contest between Le Verrier and Adams to be the first to discover a new planet using only a mathematical formula was just as grand, just as glorious, just as full of intrigue, and even more likely to provoke a fight today if you ask the wrong person who really won. All you French people out there in the audience tonight, do you think Adams should get the credit? No, you don't. You want Le Verrier, so wave your flags for Le Verrier.
The stage manager waves a French flag and signals for all with French flags to join in.
Félicitations à l'homme qui a découvert une planète avec le point de sa plume. Congratulations to the man who discovered a planet with the point of his pen. All you British people, do you think Le Verrier should get all the credit? Of course not. You want Adams. So wave your flags for Adams. Hip hip hooray!
The stage manager waves a British flag and signals for all those with British flags to join in.
That one person out there with the German flag, we'll get back to you, but why don't you go ahead and wave it right now if you want. Wave it for William Herschel. Just don't wave it too much because while Herschel was born in Germany, he moved to Britain when he was 19 and became a music teacher long before he became famous for something else. Yeah. Okay, right back to the play.
The stage manager exits. Le Verrier resumes speaking. He has a chalkboard to write on if he feels compelled to draw anything.
Let us review. From the time of the ancients, we knew of only 6 planets in the heavens: Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Shepherds and scholars alike saw them with their own eyes and followed their path through the stars. This was the entirety of our solar system. That all changed one March night in 1781. William Herschel, a musician, not even a real astronomer, pointed his telescope into the skies over Bath, England, and saw something no one had ever seen before. A smudge of light in the constellation Gemini. It wasn't in any of the star charts. He magnified it for a better view. Lo, this strange new light doubled in size. Distant stars do not double in size with magnification, but this new light did. Herschel magnified it again. Once again, the light doubled in size. Again, doubling more. That could only mean one thing. That speck of light was no star. It was something else, something much closer to our Earth. Herschel knew it could only be one thing: a comet. A comet! But Herschel had not discovered a comet. He had discovered something else entirely. He had discovered an entirely new planet. A new planet beyond the range of human sight and human imagination. Suddenly, a whole new question arose before us. If there could be one new planet, could there be another? Why, yes, there could be. And more importantly, yes, there is. And today I shall show you where it is, not with a telescope, but with nothing more than mathematics. You shall be witness to the discovery of a new planet, discovered here on a chalkboard in France. Because you see, Herschel's planet has a problem. It won't stay in the right orbit. It is always speeding up or slowing down. Every other planet has a regular orbit, a predictable orbit. But something about Herschel's planet is not so predictable. Ever since Herschel first found this planet, legions of astronomers have been calculating and researching its orbit, trying to find their mistake. I am here to tell you, they have made no such mistakes. They have not forgotten to carry a 1 or move a decimal point here or there. They have simply overlooked the obvious. Uranus does not abide by a predictable orbit because there is another planet out there beyond whose gravity is so strong that it's always tugging on Herschel's planet, pushing it and pulling it, protruding its orbit. Everyone else is trying to find the mistakes that they've made, but I believe just the opposite. I believe if we take all those mistakes, which aren't really mistakes, we can use them to find this new planet. We can find it here on a chalkboard before we even see it in the sky. Shall we begin?
Lights down. Le Verrier stays in place in the dark to signify his year hasn't changed, yet lights up on another part of the stage. John Couch Adams enters. He is in his late 20s, quiet and humble, and telling the story from a vantage point of a year or so after 1846.
Hello there. I hope I haven't kept you waiting long.
Stage manager enters.
John Couch Adams, the self-effacing English mathematical prodigy who helped spark an international incident. And the year is, well, something beyond all the controversies of 1846, that's for sure.
Stage manager exits.
Father says I should come speak to you. I'd really rather not. I don't want to cause any more controversy. I have always given full credit to Mr. Verrier, but I understand there is some interest in my own calculations, and the mathematics are quite fascinating. And I'd always much rather talk about mathematics than that other business anyway. So I suppose I should begin at the beginning. It always helps with any problem if you begin at the beginning. I grew up in Cornwall. My father was a poor tenant farmer. I'm afraid I was never much use for on the farm. My father said he'd always find me staring off into space when I should have been doing my chores. But I wasn't daydreaming. I was working out figures in my head. They say that when I was just a lad, I was the talk of the town. I wouldn't know about that. I do know we once got a new schoolmaster. Poor fellow knew barely any algebra. But I tutored him well enough, I suppose. And that's really where it all began. When I was 15, that would have been 1834, I won the school honor for mathematics. First prize came with a copy of a book called Astronomy. Astronomy? What interest did I have in looking at the stars? And that's when I discovered astronomy wasn't just about the things we can see, it's about the things we can't. Astronomy is really all about mathematics.
Lights down. Adam stays in place in the dark. Lights up. George Airy enters. He is in his 40s. He is small-minded and obsessed with rules and order. In this scene, it is 1834, and he is director of the Cambridge Observatory. He enters in a huff, harried, and to his mind, overworked. Airy?
Better now. Don't bring me any more letters. I've got enough letters already.
Stage manager enters with a batch of letters.
The year is 1834, the same year that the teenage Adams won the book on astronomy.
Stage manager hands Airy a batch of letters and then exits.
Fine, fine. Give me the letters. George Airy. Plumian Professor of Astronomy, Director of the Cambridge Observatory. Well, at least it's addressed correctly. You wouldn't believe some of the ones I get. But the ones that are addressed correctly are the worst. They're all amateur astronomers who think they know something, and let me assure you, they don't know anything. My dear Professor Airy, please allow me to introduce myself. What did I tell you? Another amateur. Such a bother. I am writing to you about the problems with the planet Uranus. I dealt with this in my report to the British Association for the Advancement of Science in 1832. That was 2 years ago now. Everybody knows the current observations of Uranus can't be reconciled with the older ones. I should send him a copy. The apparently inexplicable discrepancies suggested to me the possibility of some disturbing body beyond Uranus, not taken into account because unknown. So let me guess. He naturally proposes to work out the position of this supposed disturbing body mathematically. Why, yes, that's precisely what he proposes. But guess what? He can't do it. I found myself totally inadequate to the former part of the task. Well, of course he does. He's a minister, not a mathematician. He shouldn't be concerning himself with the heavens.
Airy looks at the letter again.
Oh, dear Lord. The poor man even went to Paris to meet with the great Alexis Bouvard. Why is he going to France anyway? Oh, and I see where Bouvard told him he had the same thought, that there's some other mysterious planet out there. And now I suppose he's going to ask me what I think of all this. So I ask you, Professor Airy, what do you think of the matter? Well, what I think is that some people have too much time on their hands. All these people and their theories. They're never doing anything practical. Now, I'll take care of this fellow. I have often thought of the irregularity of Uranus. It is a puzzling subject, but I give it as my opinion without hesitation. that it is not yet in such a state as to give the smallest hope of making out the nature of any external action on the planet. It is far more likely to be the gravity of Saturn or the sun at some supposed eighth planet. Preposterous. And even if there were such a planet, we'll never find it. We'd need to have several orbits of Uranus to sort out all the details, and since it takes 84 years for Uranus to orbit the sun, well, this isn't a problem any of us will ever see solved. Now let's move along. We've got real work to do here tonight, practical work.
Lights down. Airy exits. Lights up on Le Verrier. He is drawing a design on the chalkboard showing the orbit of Halley's Comet.
Now, the thing to remember is that we French have always been at the forefront of trying to figure out the problem of Herschel's planet. The British may have found it, but we French are the ones who have been most active in trying to solve all of the problems it presents. Jean Vlas, director of the Verrier Observatory, he set to work on the problem 11 years ago, back in 1835. Halley's Comet was coming back around when it hit its orbit, was out of alignment with all of the calculations. Jean Vlas thought he could use the comet's orbit to find this new planet. He didn't. But the point is, he tried. The great Alexis Bouvard of the Paris Observatory, he tried as well. We have reams and reams of his observations of Uranus and the calculations he made to try to deduce the orbit of whatever lay beyond it. I tell you today, these men did not fail. They blazed a trail through the mathematical thicket, a trail blazed by Frenchmen for all mankind, a trail that I have now followed to its ultimate and logical conclusion. This new planet that I will demonstrate to you today, this new planet shall be a French planet.
Stage manager enters with French flag and signals that all with French flags should fly them. Lights down on Le Verrier and stage manager. Lights up on Adams.
So I told you that when I was 15, I won a book on astronomy. That was quite fortuitous, because the next year, when I was 16, I was able to calculate the position of the sun. Every day at noon, I made a little mark on the windowsill. From those, I was able to use an instrument I made out of cardboard to calculate the sun's position in relationship to the horizon. And that's how I was able to calculate that the solar eclipse would be visible from Cornwall. My father couldn't understand such things. He asked to see my papers, but it was just a single sheet. He asked me how I could figure out such a thing on just a single sheet. Easy, I told him. I did most of it in my head. He was skeptical that this farm boy's son could predict an eclipse, but then the sky started to get dark, right on schedule.
Lights down on Adams. Lights up. Airy enters. You're muted.
These infernal queries, but no, they all come to me, even more than when I was at Cambridge.
Stage manager enters while Airy looks through his letters.
The year is 1837.
And the stage manager exits.
Amateur, amateur, more amateurs. Here's one that's not an amateur. Eugene Bouvard, nephew of the great Alexis Bouvard in Paris. Well, let's see what he has to say.
Airy opens the letter and looks it over.
Bouvard's working on new charts for Uranus. We all know the predicted positions for Uranus are getting worse every day. I said so myself in that report 5 years ago. Doesn't anybody read?
Airy starts to read.
Does this suggest an unknown perturbation by a body situated further away? That is my uncle's idea. But to answer it, I need to reduce the observations of Uranus with the utmost precision, and in many respects, I lack the means to do so. So he wants my help. Don't these people know I have an observatory to run? A royal observatory. But at least he called the planet by its proper name. That's more than some of these Frenchmen do.
Lights down on Airy. Lights up on Le Verrier.
Before I demonstrate my calculations today, calculations that will point the way to an entirely new world, let me tell you about the hand and mind from whence they came. Let me tell you about myself. Perhaps you know me from my papers, or perhaps you know me from the press. The press has had quite a bit to say about me. Oh, quite flattering, I must say. But here's something you may not know. I was not always a mathematician. Shocking, no? Before I was a mathematician, I was a chemist, employed in a state administration of tobacco. I must say my papers on phosphorus were quite remarkable. In 1837, I was one of 2 finalists for a position as an instructor of chemistry at the École Polytechnique. I did not get the position. It went to the other fellow. He had done some paper on sulfur. I was sure it was thoroughly sufficient. I must say I was taken aback until the director told me why he had chosen the other candidate. It seemed he had 2 positions available. The other one was teaching astronomy. Now, I'm no astronomer, but then he told me something that changed my life. He told me that astronomy today is as much peering into equations as it is peering into a telescope. And I was always quite strong with mathematics. He had told me something else. The post of astronomy professor was previously held by none other than Francos Argo, now the director of the Paris Observatory. I declared then and there that I must make myself worthy of Argos' legacy. The director asked me if I had any thoughts on what my first project should be. Something big, I told him. Something important. Something that requires such vast amounts of calculation that a lesser man would be thoroughly intimidated. And that's when he told me about celestial mechanics. So there it was. I vowed to take on the most daunting problems in celestial mechanics. What holds the solar system together?
Lights down on Le Verrier. Lights up on Airy.
All these people with their theories about Uranus. We are not here to run some speculative planet hunting service. We are here at the Greenwich Observatory to make accurate measurements of the stars so that Britain might efficiently navigate the seas.
Stage manager enters with a British flag and signals for all those with British flags to fly them. And the stage manager exits.
Send a letter to Bouvard. Repeat what I've told all the others. Yes, the errors in Uranus's orbit are growing with fearful rapidity. I cannot conjecture the cause of these errors. If it be the effect of some unseen body, it will be nearly impossible to ever find out its place. There, send it off. Now let's get back to work. Maritime commerce is at stake. What's that? You say it's clouded over and started to rain? Why are you telling me this? You will stay at your post regardless of the weather. This is the Royal Observatory. We do not just run home when the weather turns a little bad. We must be at the ready no matter what the circumstances. Is that understood? And no frivolities either. I want each man by his instrument. These young people, they can't be trusted, always wanting to lay about. I have to watch them like a hawk.
Lights down on Airy. Lights up on Adams.
In 1839, I was accepted at Cambridge. The examiner seemed quite impressed with my marks in mathematics and were quite surprised when they learned I was from Cornwall. That's not a place that produces a lot of scholars, it seems.
Lights down. Adams exits. Lights up on Le Verrier.
And so I began. In 1839, I presented my promised paper on celestial mechanics. It was quite the talk of the town, I must say. I studied the way the orbits of the inner planets oscillate over the years at 200,000 year increments. If you're not a mathematician, you may think of it in terms of high tide and low tide. I arrived at the same results as the great French astronomer Joseph Louis Lagrange, but with very different methods. I also spotted an error in Lagrange's original calculations. He assigned the wrong mass to Venus, but his equation essentially canceled out his own error, so if Lagrange had used any other method, his error might have never been exposed years ago. Who was this young upstart who found an error in the work of the great Lagrange? I soon was summoned to the Paris Observatory by none other than Argo himself. He had an assignment for me to calculate the orbit of Mercury. Nobody's ever gotten it quite right. Argo thought it might have something to do with the sun. I remember what Argo told me that day. I like to challenge the young astronomers of France with important problems. That is why this observatory exists. For the glory of science and the glory of France!
Stage manager enters with French flag and signals that all with French flags should fly them. Lights down. Verrier and stage manager exit. Lights up on Airy.
But that reminds me. Richardson, come here.
Airy picks out an audience member to be Richardson.
You're scheduled to go to County Durham next week to check on some instruments. Now, I've written up this schedule for you. It tells you exactly which train to take from London and where you need to change trains and how. Follow this to the letter and you won't get lost. Now, wait, I'm not done. You'll be going out into the country, and you never know what conditions are like there. So I've packed you soap and towels just in case. Can you follow all that? Good.
Airy walks away from the audience member and speaks more generally.
Nothing must be left to chance. Everything to the letter. I don't care if it's raining. Every astronomer at his post.
Lights down. Airy exits. Lights up on stage manager.
Arago's concern for mentoring the young astronomers of France was admirable, but he was looking at the wrong end of the solar system. The real problem in the heavens is not with Mercury, but with Uranus. All through the 1830s, it became worse, much worse. Oh, there were theories to explain the discrepancies in Uranus's orbit, all kinds of theories. Some believed it was because the planet is so far from the sun. Perhaps gravity doesn't work so well that deep in space.
Verrier enters.
Although, if that is the case, then gravity must run out somewhere just beyond Saturn, because Saturn's orbit performs just fine.
Some believed space is filled with some sort of cosmic fluid, which has the effect of slowing down the planet.
Although, if that is the case, this fluid must begin somewhere just beyond Saturn. I say again, Saturn's orbit performs just fine.
Even the new astronomy professor at the École Polytechnique, who has been trained as a chemist, understood the fallacies of these arguments.
The solution to this problem will not be found in some unknown physical property. It will be found with mathematics.
Some believed a comet has struck the planet, knocking it off balance. Perhaps this happened not long after Herschel discovered this world. That way, the older positions can be reconciled with the newer ones.
An unsatisfying answer. Theoretically possible, but the mathematical equivalent of the Greek theater. Due machina. The gods come down from the heavens to solve everything. There are no gods in mathematics.
Others believed Uranus has such a large moon that it was pulling the planet far from its orbit.
An interesting conjecture. Yet this moon would have to be so big it could disrupt an entire planet, yet small enough that it escapes detection with even our most powerful telescopes. And yet Every day, it seems we pluck a new asteroid out of the depths of space and add it to our charts. These are not logical answers, and mathematics is the epitome of logic.
So what can it be? Lots of astronomers were coming to the same conclusion, that there had to be yet another planet beyond Uranus. What a marvel that would be. But how could anyone find something if they don't know where it is?
Mathematics is the key which we shall unlock the secrets of the universe.
But to calculate the position of something we haven't seen and aren't sure even exists, why, that would be an extraordinary triumph of science. One of the most extraordinary of an extraordinary age. But who could undertake such a challenge? It would require an extraordinary talent.
This orbit has bedeviled astronomers for years, but I set out to resolve it.
An extraordinary effort.
I shall devote years to the task if necessary.
One astronomer thought he was up to the challenge.
We need new tables, new methods. The old ways will not do.
And one astronomer was determined to try.
The ephemerides of Mercury will not elude us.
I refer, of course, to Friedrich Wilhelm Bessel, director of the Nogisburg Observatory in Prussia, and one of the most brilliant mathematicians of the age.
Stage manager waves German flag and signals for one audience member with a German flag to wave it.
Argo assigned the problem of Mercury to me. I set out to conquer Mercury. I shall find the mathematics and explain Mercury.
As for Bessel, he said he'd get to Uranus in a year or so. First, he had some work to do on double stars.
Mercury for France!
Stage manager waves French flag and signals that all with French flags should fly them. Le Verrier exits.
Mercury for France and Uranus for another day.
Lights down on stage manager. Stage manager exits. Lights up. Stage manager enters.
June 26, 1841. This was another day, just not that day. This was the day a certain young Cambridge student visited Johnson's bookshop.
Stage manager puts on a costume to signify a store clerk. Adams enters.
Oh, welcome. If I can help you find anything, just let me know.
Thank you. Just looking.
Oh, I have histories over here and literature over here if you're interested in either of those.
No thanks. I'm fine.
Nothing much but science is over where you are.
Yes, that's fine.
Well, if you want to see anything on the top shelf, just ask and I'll get a ladder.
Oh, what's that one up there? The red one?
Adams points to the thin red book.
Yeah, let's see. Oh, the red one, is it? Well, let me get the ladder.
If it's not too much trouble.
Stage manager gets the ladder.
No, not at all. That's what I'm here for.
Stage manager climbs up the ladder to retrieve the red book.
No, yes. A report on the progress of astronomy during the present century by George Airy. Oh, he's the Astronomer Royal, a former Cambridge man.
Yes, I'd like to see that, please.
Stage manager flips through the pages.
Well, this looks like the report he did for the British Association for the Advancement of Science. Oh, 1832.
9 years ago.
Stage manager comes down the ladder and hands Adams the book.
Oh, it's somewhat dated, I'm afraid. All the science books become outdated so quickly these days. Well, that's why I don't carry many of them. Now Shakespeare, but he never becomes outdated.
It has something here about Uranus.
Oh, well, I don't know anything about that.
Hardly anyone does.
Well, not much on the sciences, I'm afraid.
With Uranus, a singular difficulty occurs. It appears impossible to unite all the observations in one elliptical orbit.
Oh, I haven't the foggiest what that means.
It says Bouvard threw out all the old observations and used only the new ones, but now even they don't work.
Well, I'll leave the ladder here in case you decide you don't want it, and I need to put it back.
I'll take it.
Oh, very good. Something for a class?
No, just a little light reading.
Doesn't seem very light to me, but to each his own.
The tables, made only 11 years ago, are now in error nearly half a minute of space. That's quite a lot.
So, might I ask, why in the world would you care about something on Uranus?
Ah, well, that's easy. Uranus is a long way out of his course. I mean to find out why. I think I know.
Oh,
Lights down. Adams exits. Lights up. Stage manager enters, dressed as an astronomer.
1 year later, 1842, at the Greenwich Observatory, the astronomer royal enters to find one of his employees peering through a telescope. A normal enough thing for an observatory, perhaps, except for one thing.
Airy enters. He stops and clearly doesn't like what he sees.
What are you
muted.
doing, young man?
Hello, Mr. Airy. I'm looking for a new planet, sir.
You're not on duty today.
No, sir, it's my day off, or my night off, rather, but I thought I did come in here and have a little look-see.
A little look-see. Young man, this observatory was not built so that you could have a look-see for new players. Let me put it in even plainer English for you. We are here to provide the navigational calculations that allow Britain to ride the waves. Anything else that causes us to deviate from that goal is a distraction that will not be tolerated. Do you understand me?
Yes, sir.
And that especially goes for such theoretical adventures as looking for new planets.
Yes, sir. I just thought that with all these new asteroids being discovered and all the talk about Uranus and the problems with its orbit...
Furthermore, this is your night off. When you are on duty, I expect you at your station for the entirety of your shift. When you are not on duty, I expect you away from your station and off the premises so that you do not disturb those who are on duty. Is that understood?
Yes, sir.
Good. Now go. If you want to look for new planets, get yourself your own telescope. This is the Queen's property here.
Stage manager exits.
Oh, these young people today. Wherever do they get these ideas? All these theories about new planets and such, completely impractical.
Stage manager enters, this time as a messenger.
Good day, sir. We have quite a bit of mail for you, sir. I've organized it just the way you like, sir.
Organization, very good.
Here's a letter from the government. Something about railroads.
Ah, yes, the Railway Gauge Commission. The government has asked me to help determine how wide the railway gauge should be. These things really should be standardized.
Yes, sir. And here's one from the Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Ah, yes, it's about Babbage.
Babbage, sir.
Babbage. Charles Babbage. He's nuttier than a fruitcake.
Is he the fellow with the calculating machine?
He's the fellow who claims he can build a calculating machine. The government's already given him £17,000, and now he wants more to finish the infernal contraption.
What's it do, sir?
Do? Well, it doesn't do anything yet because it's not finished. But he claims it will mechanically add, subtract, multiply, and divide numbers, just like a whole counting house full of clerks. The Chancellor asked me to take a look at it and offer my opinion.
And what do you think about it, sir?
It's worthless.
Worthless, sir?
You heard me, worthless. Utterly worthless. Babbage lives in a dream world about this machine of his. He thinks someday people will actually use a machine to calculate with. Preposterous. I'll write the Chancellor and tell him he's better off melting down Babbage's machine for scrap, using a machine to calculate. Ah, such theories. Any other correspondence today?
No, just this, sir. It's from Germany. From the observatory at Königsberg.
Ah, yes. Bessel's place. I wonder what Herr Bessel is up to.
Airy reads the letter.
Oh, such a shame.
What is it, sir?
Well, Bessel's taken ill. He's had to stop work on all his projects.
Well, what project was he working on, sir?
Oh, something about Uranus. He had this theory about another planet influencing Uranus' orbit. It's nothing important, not like his other work. Just the kind of theoretical nonsense that would get some of these fellows here distracted from their duties for no good end. But I am sorry to hear he's taken ill. That's a shame.
Airy exits. Stage manager enters.
The year is 1843. In Cambridge, John Couch Adams completes his final year of studies.
Adams enters in a graduation gown. He stands sheepishly.
In Paris, Le Verrier works on his calculations for Mercury.
Le Verrier enters and begins writing on a chalkboard.
Now, we know that Mercury is approximately 0.38 astronomical units from the sun. Of course, we also know that Mercury's orbit is circular. The eccentricity of its orbit is 0.2056.
Stage manager dons the costume of a Cambridge don.
Congratulations, John. 4,000 marks on your examination. That's the best by anyone so far. Why, here the second place student didn't even score 2,000. Has anyone ever scored that high here at Cambridge? I'd be surprised. I even hear some of your friends are placing wagers on how well you do.
And so that means when Mercury is at an aphelion, its distance from the sun can be expressed as x, and at the perihelion as y.
Congratulations, John. You've won the first Smith Prize for the year 1843, our highest honor in mathematics. Well, not that any of us are surprised, of course, but, congratulations anyway. It's quite an honor.
And we know that Mercury's mass, expressed in relation to the Earth, is approximately 0.055.
So not only does Adams graduate with the highest honors, he is immediately invited back to Cambridge to teach.
And since Mercury completes its orbit around the sun in approximately 88 days, or to be precise, 87.96.
So, John, you're going back to Cornwall this summer, I hear. However will you pass the time?
I think I'll do some work on the problem of Uranus.
This makes no sense at all. Why aren't these numbers working?
Lights down. Stage manager, Adams, and Le Verrier exit. Lights up. Stage manager enters with a basket of apples.
The summer of 1843. Adams is back home in Cornwall, but his head is in the stars, or more accurately, the planets.
Adams enters. He's distracted, scribbling on something. Stage manager puts on a costume of a farmer.
Chores, John. We still have chores to do around here.
Sorry, I was just a bit distracted.
You've been distracted all summer. Busy making lesson plans for your students, are you?
My students? Oh, no, that will be easy. I'll just stand up and lecture to them.
So what is it you've been doing all summer then? Every time I see you, you're scribbling down something.
Ah, that. Yes, sorry. I'm trying to discover a planet.
The stage manager laughs.
I thought planets were up in the sky.
They are, but I think there's one here, too.
Doesn't look much like a star chart to me, John. But where are we supposed to look to see this new planet?
I don't know yet.
You're proposing to discover a planet when you don't even know where to look for it?
Exactly. But when I finish with this, I think I'll know where to look.
Seems like you put the cart before the horse.
In a way, I have.
Huh. At least you still got some of your farm sense about you. Not that you had much to begin with, from what I hear. Your father did always say you were better at figuring than farming. Oh, but we're mighty proud of you anyway.
You see, Uranus's motion makes no sense. Some believe it's being influenced, perturbed is the astronomical term, by some planet we haven't seen yet. But we can't determine how much it's being influenced until we know what its orbit should be without any influences. And we can't determine that until we know how much it's being influenced by this unseen planet. So you see, we're stuck.
Don't recommend getting my wagon in the mud.
You see, everybody else starts with Uranus's orbit and tries to puzzle it out from there. I'm going to do just the opposite. I'm going to start by making some guesses about the orbit of this new planet first and see what happens.
So you are putting the cart before the horse. But at least then you know where the horse is. How are you gonna just guess? This new planet of yours could be anywhere.
Not really. Here, let me explain.
Adams finds a basket of apples and uses them to illustrate. Each one is twice as far from the sun as the one before it.
Here's the sun, here's Mercury, here's Venus, here's Earth, here's Mars, here's the asteroid belt, here's Jupiter, here's Saturn, here's Uranus. What do you notice?
They're all apples? I don't have a clue.
Well, first, all the planets are in the same plane. So you don't have one up here and one down there and one over there. So that means we don't need to look at those places. We can just narrow it down to this plane.
Makes sense.
But here's the real key. There's an order to them. See, Venus is twice as far from the sun as Mercury. Earth is twice as far from the sun as Venus. Mars is twice as far as the Earth, and so forth. It's called Bode's Law. Some astronomers swear by it. Others think it's just a numbers trick, but it does work, and you've got to start somewhere. So that's where I'm starting. I'm assuming that this new planet is twice as far from the sun as Uranus is.
All right then. So where does that put you?
Adams steps off the distance.
It puts us out here. Of course, the planets aren't lined up nice and neat like this. They're every which way in their orbits. So all I have to do is work my way around this orbit and figure out how big a planet it must be to have the kind of influence on Uranus it's having, and where it ought to be right now. Then we can go look for it, and I think we'll be close.
Sounds like a load of math.
It'll take a fair amount.
How long do you think it'll take you?
At the rate I'm going, several years.
Several years?
As you say, it's a lot of math.
How many people have discovered planets in such the way you're doing here?
Like this? No one. But I'm sure it can be done. It's just a matter of doing the math.
Lights down. Adams and stage manager exit. Lights up. Stage manager and Le Verrier are already on stage. Le Verrier is writing a long, complicated equation on the chalkboard.
Meanwhile, in Paris, Le Verrier presents his long-awaited paper on Mercury.
And 57.
Le Verrier circles the number, which is meaningless.
Therefore, I must sadly conclude that the problem of Mercury cannot be solved. There is something fundamentally wrong with Mercury's orbit. Perhaps someday someone will develop some entirely new law of physics to explain it. Until then, Mercury is a problem that defies even our most stringent analysis.
Bravo, Professor Le Verrier, bravo! Doesn't that deserve a bravo?
Stage manager exhorts the audience to shout bravo. Le Verrier exalts the adulation.
Bravo, bravo!
Merci, merci.
The stage manager waves the French flag and encourages those in the audience with French flags to wave them.
Never before has there been a more celebrated failure than Le Verrier's declaration that the problems of Mercury couldn't be solved. Bravo! Bravo! Bravo!
Merci, merci.
So, Professor, what will your next project be? Something more with orbital calculations? You have such immense talents in that area, as your presentation here today made so clear.
Well, to be honest, there is one problem that I've been giving some thought to. One that I think might have quite a bit of public interest if I prove to be successful, which I certainly intend to be.
Yes, yes, do we dare say it?
Comets!
Le Verrier exits.
Comets. Comets. November 23rd, 1843, the French astronomer Verrier spies a new comet. His discovery meant just one thing. The race was on to compute its orbit.
Adams enters unobtrusively.
Professor Chalice with the Cambridge Observatory asked me if I could help with the math. Said it might be a nice coup for England just so the French don't get all the credit.
And Le Verrier enters with a flourish.
So, our great countryman Fay has plucked a new comet out of the heavens. I have taken all the observations thus far recorded and determined that this new celestial visitor orbits the sun.
Once every 7.5 years.
This means this is most definitely not Lexel's most lost comet of 1770. Instead, this
is a genuinely new comet. Moving in an orbit that does not take it particularly far into the outer reaches of the solar system.
There is one oddity about this comet, however.
This comet may not have been moving long in its present orbit. My calculations show that in 1841, the comet passed precipitously close to the planet Jupiter, which may have materially changed the nature of its orbit. Yet another curious example of how one body in the solar system is able to influence the orbit of another.
Le Verrier and Adams both look heavenward.
For the glory of France!
Stage manager waves the French flag and signals for audience members with French flags to wave them. Le Verrier exits. Stage manager dons the costume of a Cambridge Don.
Early 1844. Very nice paper on the comet, John. The Royal Astronomical Society is going to publish a little something in their monthly notices, I'm told. Too bad that French fellow got his report out first, but your calculations are virtually identical. I do appreciate your work on this. If there's anything I can ever do for you, just let me know what it is.
Thank you, Professor Chalice. Actually, there is something, if I might ask.
Certainly, just name it.
You know the Astronomer Royal rather well, don't you?
George Airy? Of course. He was my predecessor in this post. Right a tight ship he did. He was a man who believed in order, filed away every piece of paper he ever received, no matter how inconsequential. Unfortunately, the universe is becoming a rather disorderly place, and that often left him rather cranky. I'm afraid, just between you and me, he is really more of a manager than an astronomer. I'm told he hasn't looked through a telescope since he took over at Greenwich. What about him?
Well, it's nothing, really, but I've been doing some work on Uranus.
I should have known. You've always liked the hard problems, don't you, John? Is it true for relaxation you like to compute mathematical problems to 200 places?
Well, yes, I do rather enjoy that. Now, as for Uranus...
Yes, Uranus. There is one that will take some calculations. That might take you more than 200 places, though, John, just warning you.
Yes, right. Well, the biggest discrepancies in Uranus's orbit are for the years between 1818 and 1826, but that's also where there's the least amount of published data on its position. But I understand the observatory at Greenwich has quite a bit of unpublished records for Uranus during those years. I was wondering if you could put in a word for me. Do you think Greenwich would share any of it?
Certainly, John. I'll drop Airy a line for you.
Thank you.
Adams exits. The stage manager abandons the costume of the Cambridge Don. Airy enters.
Letter for you, sir, from Professor Chalice at Cambridge.
Chalice. He's let the observatory slip a bit, I'm afraid. Too lax he is. I tell you, too lax. Wonder what he wants.
Airy reads the letter.
A young friend of mine, Mr. Adams, is working in the theory of Uranus and is desirous of obtaining the tabular geocentric longitudes of this planet when near opposition in the years 1818 to 1826. Uranus, good luck on that.
What should I tell him, sir?
Tell us everything we have on Uranus.
Everything, sir.
You heard me, everything. Don't make me repeat myself. I trust you've kept those records in order the way I asked.
Yes, sir.
We keep those records for a reason, so that we can respond to requests like this in an efficient manner.
Yes, sir.
Even if it is a ridiculous one. These people and their theories.
Harry exits. Stage manager adopts a new costume and picks up a box.
Delivery for Adams.
Adams enters.
I'm Adams.
All right, this is for you.
Adams reads the return address.
From the Royal Observatory, Greenwich.
Stage manager exits. Adams opens the box.
This must be the records I asked for.
Stage manager enters with another box.
And this is for you.
Stage manager exits.
Oh, another?
Adams opens that. Stage manager enters with another box.
And so is this.
Stage manager exits.
What? More? I hadn't dared ask for more than 8 years' worth of observations. How many did he send?
Stage manager enters with yet another box.
Looks like all of them.
All of them?
Feel free to give me a hand. This isn't even half of them.
Stage manager exits.
I've got examination papers to grade piling up on my desk. I don't know when I'll get to all these. Certainly not before summer.
Adams picks up the boxes and exits. Lights down. Lights up. Stage manager enters.
Still 1844, Le Verrier presents his paper to the French Academy.
Le Verrier enters with a flourish. Stage manager waves a French flag and indicates all in the audience where the French flag should do so.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you for that wonderful introduction.
Stage manager signals more waving and signals for applause as well.
You may hold your applause until the end.
Nonetheless, stage manager still signals for applause.
Thank you, thank you. Your approbation is truly humbling.
It's clear that Le Verrier does not feel any humility whatsoever. Stage manager signals for the applause to cease.
All right then, let's begin. My subject today is comets, specifically their orbits, and even more specifically, the role that Jupiter plays influencing their orbits of comets that pass too near to the giant planet.
Stage manager signals for applause.
I refer you to my previous work on phase comet, whose orbit I personally calculated. No easy task. Mind you, given the perturbations that Jupiter had exerted upon the celestial visitor.
Stage manager signals for even more applause and then signals an audience member who was given a line to say.
Are we not blessed to witness the most gifted theatrician in the world today?
Stage manager signals for an audience member who was given a line to say.
I've certainly never heard of anyone else.
Stage manager signals for more applause and waving of the French flags. Lights down. Le Verrier and stage manager exit. Lights up. Stage manager enters in a farmer's costume.
September 1844. Adams is back home in Cornwall, preparing for a new term at Cambridge, or at least preparing for something.
Adams enters with a paper full of mathematical writing.
There, it's finally done.
What's done?
My equation for Uranus, or rather the new planet.
So you found it then?
Not yet, but I've proven it's there. This equation explains how the discrepancies in Uranus's orbit are clearly related to an unseen planet at approximately 38.4 astronomical units from the Sun.
So where is it? Have you laid out those apples on the ground again?
That will take some more calculations. I'm hoping I can find the time when I get back to Cambridge, but now I know for sure it's out there.
May I see? Not that I'd be able to understand it.
Adams hands the paper to the stage manager.
This whole page is your equation?
Yes, I thought it would take much more, but it's quite simple, really, once you think about it.
Oh, I'm afraid it's all Greek to me.
Well, there are some Greek symbols in there, yes.
You know you were supposed to help your father make Aido today, don't you?
The hay, I completely forgot. I'm sorry.
Quite all right, lad. Quite all right. You wouldn't have been much help anyway.
Yeah, that's true. I'm not much for the farm work.
We brought in the hay. We brought in the mail. Here's a letter for you from somebody named Chalice.
Stage manager hands Adams a letter.
Oh, Chalice from the Cambridge Observatory.
Adams opens the letter.
Perhaps he can help you look for that new planet of yours.
Oh, there's a new comet.
Another one? Skies are getting awfully crowded, aren't they?
It would certainly be advantageous if we could compute an orbit for this new comet before the French do. The Astronomical Society is out of session for the moment, so perhaps it would be advisable for you to send a communication to the Times instead, so we can have the credit in England.
The stage manager signals for all with the British flag to fly them.
You're going to be in the Times?
Oh, apparently so, as soon as I do the math.
Adams exits. Verrier enters with a flourish. Stage manager uses this time to change into the costume of a Cambridge Dawn.
De Vico's comet appears to be another short period comet orbiting the sun.
Adams enters.
Once
every
five and a half
years.
Another curiosity that is common with short period comets. The orbit of De Vico's comet takes it perilously close to Jupiter, rising the possibility that the comet's orbit might change in the future. Another mathematical victory for France.
Stage manager signals for all those with French flags to fly them. Verrier exits. Adams enters.
Saw your piece in the Times, John. Very well done. Unfortunately, the French beat us again. Same fellow as before, actually. Verrier is his name. But if it's any consolation, once again your numbers agree. So back to the problem of Uranus?
Back to classwork, I'm afraid. It'll probably be next year before I can work on Uranus again. I'm usually so tied down grading papers that it seems I can only find the time to work on Uranus during summer break.
Adams works on his calculations.
The winter of 1844 turns into the spring of 1845, which turns into the summer of 1845. Adams continues his calculations when he can.
And for T 1786, then the value of T is...
The stage manager puts on the robe of a Cambridge Dawn.
John, care to join us for tea?
And for T 1789, the value is... what? I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were there.
I said some of the fellows are going out for a spot of tea. Care to join us?
Oh, that's all right. You go ahead. I've got some more work to do here.
Ah, Uranus again, is it?
Yes, still on Uranus. Maybe next time.
Oh, suit yourself. Cheerio.
Stage manager exits.
Now for T 1972, the value is...
Adams looks up and speaks to the audience.
You're probably wondering how I'm doing this, aren't you? Quite simple, really. Just tedious. I'm going back over all the data that Greenwich sent me. I'm just doing every third year to save myself some work, but that's still 21 sets of equations. Take this one. It's for the year 1796. So T 1796, T standing for time. For each of these, I'm taking the Greenwich observations, determining what the discrepancy was that year between where Uranus was supposed to be and where it actually was on each of its observations, and then I'll plug all those results into my equation. Have you ever hunted grouse?
Adams approaches audience members.
Have you? Have you? Anyone? Well, imagine you're hunting grouse. We hear the grouse out there in the bush somewhere, but We're just not sure where. So we fire 21 shots around it. Each one might miss, but we've at least determined where the grouse isn't. So that means we've narrowed down where the grouse must be. So if we look at these 21 equations and bracket the discrepancies over the past 60 years or so, and then recalculate Uranus's orbit, take into account an unseen planet of a particular size, if we do that 21 times, my God, the discrepancies are gone. Here they were, 90 arc seconds. Well, now out of range. Now they're down to 1 or 2 arc seconds. That's practically nothing. Let me double check all of these, and I'll compare them to Bouvard's observations as well. See if the equation still works. So X is and K is. Oh dear God, it works! It works!
Stage manager enters, still dressed as a Cambridge Dawn.
Monsieur T. John, have you found your planet yet?
Not yet, but I'm close.
Adams exits, lights down. Stage manager exits. Lights up. Le Verrier enters. He is now back in his lecture.
And so our review continues. Not quite 1 year ago, September 1st, 1845, Eugene Bouvard presented his latest tables on Uranus to the Academy of Scientists. He and his uncle have been working on the problem for many years. No one has done more work on Herschel's planet than the Bouvards. No one. Brilliant astronomers. And yet, they still haven't gotten the orbit right. In some places, they're off by as much as 15 arc seconds. The Bouvards have made a valiant effort, but their failures are not allowed to continue. Uranus simply must be put in its place. That's when Argo came to me. Argo always comes to me. He said to me,
Airy enters wearing a French beret to signify he is Arago.
Oh ben, if we are ever to hope to solve this problem of Herschel's planet, we need the brightest mathematical mind in France to take it on. Who would you recommend?
Naturally, I recommended myself.
Ah, but I thought you were working on comets.
Comets can wait, I told him. If the director of the Paris Observatory says that Herschel's planet is the nation's top scientific priority, then who am I to substitute my judgment for his? I humbly accept your challenge. Uranus shall be brought under control. I guarantee it.
That's what I like about you, Verrier. Always so agréable.
Airy, as Arago, exits. Stage manager enters.
It was often said that Le Verrier may not be the most detestable man in France, but he was the most detested.
Lesser men, jealous of my brilliance.
Le Verrier exits. Stage manager puts on the robe of a Cambridge Dawn.
That same month, Le Verrier began work on Uranus. Adams had already completed his. September 1845, he presented his findings to James Challis, the director of the Cambridge Observatory.
I think I've got a position for the new planet.
You don't say.
I've worked out some calculations. Here are the assumptions I've made about the new planet, and here's how all those assumptions explain Uranus's position for the past 60 years. And there's where I compute the new planet will be in a few weeks, on October 1st at 326.5 degrees longitude. That would place it right on the edge of Aquarius, not far from the border with Capricorn.
Fascinating, fascinating. You should send this to Airy. I'm sure he'd like to see this.
Well, I was about to leave for Cornwall. I'll need to pass through London. Perhaps I could make a side trip to Greenwich. Do you think it would be all right if I called on Airy personally to deliver these?
Yes, it would be wonderful. Here, I'll write you a letter of introduction. How about that?
And did I tell you that I expect it will have enough size that you'd be able to make out a recognizable disk with the telescope large enough?
My friend Mr. Adams will probably deliver this note to you.
Such as the one you have here at Cambridge?
From his character as a mathematician and his practice in calculation, I should consider the deductions from his premises to be made in a trustworthy manner.
Here, I'll leave you a summary.
Yes, fascinating.
And here's the longitude I expect it next week, 326.5 degrees.
Here's your letter. Have a good trip.
That's in Aquarius.
Yeah, I'll see you when the new term begins next month.
Adams nods and exits.
Aquarius, eh? Well, I think Gary will be impressed, and Gary's not usually one to take a shine to youngsters either. I suppose I could look for myself, but I can't disrupt our observational schedule just based on some equation. Let's see what Gary thinks first.
Stage manager exits. Adams enters, letter of introduction in hand.
Hello, I'm John Couch-Adams from Cambridge. I was hoping to see Mr. Airy. I have a letter of introduction here from Professor Chalice.
Stage manager enters in regular costume.
Late September 1845. Adams calls at Greenwich. Airy, though, is out of the country.
Perhaps I could leave this with you then?
Adams hands the letter to the stage manager.
A letter of introduction, that's all.
Well, I have some calculations I wanted to show him, but I'd better hold on to them. I think it's best if I show them to him in person so I can explain them.
Very well, I'll take your letter.
Good day.
Adams exits.
Just one of many missed opportunities. Chalice could have looked for the new planet. Adams could have left the calculations. Instead, neither happened. Meanwhile, in Paris, the Verrier set to work.
Le Verrier enters.
So we have a mystery, a crime, if you wish. Why won't Uranus obey the laws of gravity? Is it subject to some bad influence? I'll approach this the way a detective would. First, investigate the obvious suspects. Could the problem be Jupiter or Saturn? So if the mass of Jupiter is X and the mass of Saturn is Y, then their gravitational function on Uranus could be expressed as Z.
Le Verrier exits.
Late September 1845, the Astronomer Royal returns to Greenwich.
Airy enters.
Welcome home, sir. It's good to have you back.
Been no disruptions, I trust.
No, sir. Everything went exactly according to the very detailed instructions you left.
What mail have I got?
A small mountains were, sir, divided into stacks, sir.
Ah, organized. Good. Very good.
These are all letters from the government.
Railway Gauge Commission, Railway Gauge Commission. This one's about weights and measures. Railway Gauge Commission again. Why can't these people understand the necessity of a single gauge? As if they have something against uniformity. Railway Gauge Commission. Oh, here's one about the clock tower in London.
And this stack is other.
Other. The usual cranks, I fear. Yes, here's one. A serving girl in the Cotswolds. Wants to know if I can supply her with her horoscope. Send her the usual form letter. That's this one. A letter of introduction? What's all this about?
Oh, some young fellow came by, said he had some calculations to show you.
Did he leave them?
No, just a letter of introduction.
From Chalice, I see. Well, send a letter to Chalice anyway. Tell him I'm very much interested in Mr. Adams' calculations and would be delighted to hear from them by letter.
Yes, sir.
Now, as for the Railway Gauge Commission, I want to see all the reports that have come in.
Airy exits. Le Verrier enters.
So, using this equation, I've eliminated Jupiter as a suspect. Now we turn our attention to Saturn. We know that Saturn orbits the Sun once every 29 years, and Uranus revolves once every 84 years. So, in the years since its discovery, Uranus was moved from here to here.
Le Verrier exits. Adams enters.
Hello, yes, I'm John Couch-Adams from Cambridge. I was hoping to see Mr. Airy.
October 1845. Adams, on his way back to Cambridge, stops again at Greenwich.
I was here a few weeks ago and dropped off a letter of introduction.
I'm sorry, Mr. Airy is unavailable at the moment.
Oh, perhaps I could come back later.
You may.
Here, let me leave my card. and I've taken the liberty of writing out a summary of my calculations. I know Mr. Airy is a busy man, so I've kept it to a single sheet so it won't take long to read. Can you see that he gets it?
I will.
Good day. Thank you.
Adams exits.
Airy does not get Adam's card. Mrs. Airy reviews the credentials of all his visitors. She got the card, but no mention of Adam's calculations or his intention to return.
Le Verrier enters.
Now, if Saturn's closest approach is 838 million miles, and its main distance point is 932 million miles, that would put Saturn here. Now, as far as Uranus...
Le Verrier exits. Adams enters.
Hello, I'm John Couch Adams from...
I know who you are.
I was hoping to see Mr. Airy. Is he in?
Sorry, Mr. Airy is unavailable at the moment.
Oh, I see. Well, I left my paper earlier. I guess I'll be going then.
Adams exits, dejected.
If someone wants to see the Astronomer Royal, they really should make an appointment, do you think?
Le Verrier enters.
Now we think Uranus moves at a mean distance of 1,781 million miles from the Sun. So that means the distance between Uranus and Saturn at their closest approach would roughly be 849 million miles.
Le Verrier exits.
November 5th, 1845. October has come and gone, and no one has looked in Aquarius for the planet Adams said was there. But Airy is finally getting around to responding to his mail.
Airy enters, writing a letter. You're muted.
Dear Mr. Adams, I'm very much obliged by the paper of results you left here a few days since, showing the perturbations on the place of Uranus produced by a planet with certain assumed elements. Assumed. Well, that's the key word there now, isn't it? He admits he hasn't seen it. How can you size up a planet until you see it? And this miraculous equation of his, where is it? Not here. He claims this is his paper. A single sheet. As if I'm supposed to believe it's that simple. Oh, Professor Airy, here are some doodles I scratched out in trigonometry class. I think there's a new planet in them. Poppycock. Assumptions. For all I know, he just guessed at everything. And how do we know he's done the math right anyway? I sure don't see it here. This is a nice little theoretical exercise, if you like theories. Maybe that's what they're accepting at Cambridge today under Chalice. But in my day, we wouldn't even have accepted this as a schoolboy's scratch paper. Look at this. He doesn't even address the radius vector, this supposed planet's distance from the sun. I suppose I'll write this Adams fellow and see if he can explain that. That would be great sport, wouldn't it? New planets? Bosh. I've got to get on with the Railway Gauge Commission.
Airy exits. Le Verrier enters.
Now, when we apply these figures to the observations of Uranus, and then calculate its orbit based on those known values, the error in its orbit comes to more than 40 arc seconds. Voila! Now we're getting somewhere.
Le Verrier exits. Adams enters with a letter. Stage manager enters dressed as a Cambridge Don.
Radius vector? Why does Airy want to know if my calculations will solve the problem of Uranus's radius vector in Bouvard's table? It's such a trivial question. If Bouvard's tables are wrong, then everything's wrong. Longitude, radius vector, you name it. That's the point. Everything about Uranus is wrong, but all those problems are solved if there's another planet. I don't know why he's so fixated on this one thing.
Are you going to write Airy and tell him that?
No, not yet. I'm working on some new calculations. I'll write him once I've worked that out.
Adams exits.
Score that as a third missed opportunity for the British. Meanwhile, in France,
Le Verrier enters. Stage manager calls for applause. Le Verrier acknowledges it with a flourish.
November 10th, 1845, Le Verrier presents to the Academy.
So, as you see, I have made an unprecedented analysis of the motion of the outer planets using not one, but two separate mathematical approaches. I have analyzed their orbits to a degree that no one has ever attempted before. One equation I have taken from the great Pierre-Simon Laplace. The other I have devised myself.
Stage manager calls for more applause for Le Verrier.
I have studied every observation of Uranus, every record. I have not omitted even so much as a single one. No one has done anything like this before. No one has ever even tried. And so I have determined Saturn's influence on Uranus is within 1/20th of the arcsecond. And from this, I have concluded that
Le Verrier pauses, holding the audience in suspension. He milks this.
I have concluded that the unusual motion of Uranus cannot be explained by the gravitational forces of Jupiter or Saturn. There must be some other explanation.
Stage manager calls for more applause for Le Verrier.
And as for what that explanation is, I will tell you
He pauses.
in my next report. I shall begin work immediately. Thank you.
Le Verrier exits. Stage manager calls for more applause. Airy enters, looking at a report.
Remarkable. Quite remarkable. I've always believed that the problems with Uranus could be explained by more study of the influences of Jupiter and Saturn. But I must admit, this Le Verrier fellow proves quite clearly that's not the case. He's really done his homework. You can see here, he's spelled out all his equations in detail.
He's not the only one working on Uranus. What about that young fellow at Cambridge? Didn't he even predict a position for the new planet?
Predictions? The gypsy fortune tellers in the market can make predictions. That doesn't make them true. Besides, he never included his calculations, just some numbers he supposedly arrived at through whatever magical means he was divining, and he never said anything about the radius vector. I wrote him back to ask if he could explain that, and you know what? I haven't heard from him since, so obviously he can't explain it. But this Le Verrier, he seems a fellow to watch. He's done some important work here. You know, I have a feeling 1846 is going to be a good year. If I can just wrap up this railway gauge commission, perhaps then I can get back to the real business of this observatory.
Perhaps finding a new planet?
Navigational charts, so that Britain might continue to rule the waves.
Stage manager signals for all with British flags to wave theirs.
That unseen planet? Only Adams knows where it is, but he can't get anyone to look for it.
Lights down. End of Act 1. Le Verrier uses Adams. Act 2. Lights up. Airy is alone on stage with a stack of empty boxes. He's marking each one empty.
Empty, 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 empty,
Stage
empty,
manager.
empty, empty.
Excuse me, but may I ask what you're doing?
Isn't it obvious? These boxes are empty, so I'm marking them as such.
But why?
So they won't get confused with the boxes that have records stored in them.
I see. May I ask why the Astronomer Royal himself is performing such a menial task? Surely you have some staff who could do this, if it must be done?
I assure you, my staff is fully employed. By night, the observers record their observations. By day, the calculators work out the coordinates necessary to produce our navigational charts. There is not a man to spare.
So the astronomer royal himself is marking empty boxes.
Can't risk the disruption. We work on a tight schedule here. People have no conception of how astronomy really works. They think it's all about stargazing, as if idly staring off into space will solve our practical problems here on Earth. Now, if you'll excuse me.
Ari picks up some of the boxes and exits.
Meanwhile, in Paris, the eyes of the astronomical world,
Ari enters and picks up more boxes.
well, most of the astronomical world,
Ari exits with boxes.
are fixed on a bright new star blazing in the firmament.
Le Verrier enters with a flourish.
Urbain Le Verrier, of course. Le Verrier the indomitable. Le Verrier the detested. Le Verrier the undeniably brilliant.
Le Verrier scratches equations on a chalkboard.
We've eliminated Jupiter and Saturn as suspects, so now we attack the orbit of Uranus itself. If we take 279 observations of the planet and recalculate each one to determine the error from its presumed orbit, then we have 279 different equations. Now, we take each one of those 279 equations and adjust the presumed orbit to account for those observations. Then voila! We have proved that the problem isn't simply an error in plotting the orbit. So next, we turn to what might be causing the problem. We have multiple suspects that have been offered. An ether that is slowing down the planet. Some irregularities in the laws of gravity. A possible collision with a comet. An unseen moon. Or, lastly, an unseen planet that is disturbing the orbit.
Le Verrier exits.
Of course, someone had already solved this problem. Someone that the astronomical establishment had never heard of. Someone who hadn't even published so much as a single paper in his brief academic career.
Adams enters.
John Coach Adams has not only concluded an unseen planet was to blame, he'd even calculated where in the sky to look for it. But only two other people in the world knew this. One was James Challis, director of the Cambridge Observatory. The other was George Airy, the astronomer royal.
Ari enters, picks up more boxes and exits. One box remains.
And they did absolutely nothing about it. Challis waited for Airy to validate Adams' calculations before he bothered to look. Airy waited for Adams to answer his inquiry about whether his equation would solve the error in Uranus's radius vector. Adams thought the radius vector question was so trivial he didn't bother to reply. Instead, he set to work on refining his calculations.
My new equation yields the same result, so I must have been right the first time.
But you'll tell the astronomer royal straight away.
Oh, I hate to bother him. He's a busy man.
That's true, he was.
Ari enters.
The Railway Gauge Commission.
Ari picks up the final box and enters.
And, of course, all those empty boxes to file away.
Stage manager exits. Le Verrier enters with a flourish.
Thank you, gentlemen, thank you. You may hold your applause until the end.
Stage manager enters. Ari enters wearing a French beret to signify he is now Arago.
June 1st, 1846. Verrier makes a presentation at the French Academy of Sciences.
It is my purpose today to examine the nature of the irregularities in the motion of Uranus, to trace them to their source, a new planet.
The crowd gasps. Go on, gasp.
Stage manager urges the crowd to guess.
Now, if we assume this planet has a mass big enough to influence Uranus, but not Saturn, let's say this mass equals m. Then, figure this mass into my equation and move along the elliptic where the other planets move. Then there is only one region of the elliptic where the protruding planet could be located in order to account for the irregularities of Uranus. The mean longitude of this new planet on the 1st of January 1800 must have been between 243 degrees and 252 degrees. So, very fine, you say. This was 1800, but where is it now, nearly half a century later? We must do more calculations, and still more calculations. And then in time, we arrive at the conclusion that the location of this planet on the 1st of January, 1847 will be 325 degrees longitude, roughly at the border of Aquarius and Capricorn. I am confident that this position within 10 degrees. You may now applaud.
Stage manager signals for applause.
There can be no doubt that this planet exists. My equation perfectly accounts the observed errors of Uranus.
Stage manager signals for more applause.
So, Arago, will you be turning your telescopes at the sky tonight to search for this new planet? To claim this new world for France?
No, not yet. It's somewhat theoretical. A very impressive theory, mind you, but still a theory. And 10 degrees Martian Novera is still rather large, don't you think? That's quite a bit of sky to search. Plus, we'd have to work backwards from the 1st of January, so why don't you do some more work on your equations and come back to us? Perhaps by the fall, we can search them.
As Arago exits, Verrier pauses, looks at the audience, and signals for more applause. He exults in adoration and then exits. Verrier enters as himself. He's reading something.
Remarkable, quite remarkable. This is the second report from Professor Verrier on Uranus. It's quite a thorough piece of work, very methodical. He makes an impressive case for a new planet, and where it might be, too, 325 degrees of longitude, about here.
Verrier points to a place on a star chart.
Isn't that close to what that young fellow at Cambridge predicted too?
Yes, it is. What was his name again?
Adams.
That's right, Adams. Interesting. Very interesting.
So are you going to look for this new planet through one of your telescopes here?
Oh, no. We don't have time for that.
What are you going to do?
Why, I'm going to write to Professor Verrier and tell him what a remarkable paper he's put together. But there's just one thing about it that bothers me.
What's that?
He doesn't address the radius vector. I don't see any mention of it here.
You asked Adams about that too, didn't you?
Yes, and he never wrote back. So obviously he couldn't explain it. Let's see if Verrier can do any better. Just because they both arrived at the same conclusion doesn't make either one of them right.
Are you going to mention Adams' calculations, how we arrived at virtually the same conclusion?
No, I don't think so. I don't see any purpose in that.
Verrier exits. Verrier enters.
Ah, a letter from the British Astronomer Royal. He must have read my paper. Yes, he has. Very good. He's impressed. Very hard to impress Verrier, I hear. What's this? He wonders whether my equation can solve the error in the radius vector. Fool. He doesn't understand. The radius vector is wrong because everything else is wrong. Once you correct the orbit of Uranus to account for a new planet, those problems go away. I'll write him at once to set him straight.
Le Verrier exits. Airy enters, reading a letter.
So the radius vector problem simply disappears. I hadn't thought about that. Remarkable. And that means there can no longer be any doubt that there's a new planet out there. And we generally know where it is.
So it means that Adams fellow might have been right all along.
I suppose it does. Imagine that, a mere schoolboy.
An instructor at Cambridge. So what else does Le Verrier say?
He asks a favor.
Le Verrier enters.
If I may be allowed to hope that you will have enough confidence in my work to search for the planet in the sky, I will hasten, sir, to send you exact positions as soon as I have calculated.
Le Verrier exits.
Imagine the French offering the British a chance to be the first to find this new world. So are you going to write him back?
Oh, no time for that. I leave for the continent on holiday soon.
That's not for more than a month.
The mails can be slow.
Do you even need a more exact position? You've now got two equations that both point to the same general part of the sky. You know more than the French do now. You only know about Le Verrier's work. They only know about Le Verrier's work, and it sounds like they're not in a hurry to go searching. You know Adam's work as well. This could be a great discovery for England if one of our observers could spot the planet first. You could search for it yourself here at Greenwich.
Oh, no, we can't do that. Don't want to disrupt our routine. Besides, as far away as this planet is, it's going to be nearly impossible to see. Our telescopes here at Greenwich are far too small, but Cambridge has a telescope big enough. Being an old Cambridge man myself, that might be quite the coup for the school and for the country. I'll post a letter to Chalice immediately.
But Chalice is away for several weeks, and Airy's letter goes into a stack of mail, unopened and unanswered.
4 days. No word from Chalice yet. We need to move on this before the French get wise. I'll post another letter to Chalice. I've taken the liberty of drawing up a program for how he ought to search for the planet.
Shouldn't he just look until he finds a star with a visible disk? If so, that's the planet.
No. Much too haphazard. Just because we need to move quickly doesn't mean we shouldn't move methodically. He should look at 325 degrees, record all the stars down to the 9th magnitude, then come back a few nights later and record them all again. If any have moved, that's the planet. We can't be sure this planet even has a visible disk. It might be too far away.
But record all the stars? That could be hundreds, even thousands. Do you have any idea how long that will take?
Yes, I have. I've done the calculations personally. Approximately 300 hours of observational time. We must sweep each sector of the sky 3 times before we abandon it. That's why Chalice must start work now, while we still have a head start on the French. I'll stress the importance of this work. I'll even offer to send him an assistant if he needs any help. That should get his attention.
Airy exits.
It did, but not in the way that Airy intended. Chalice was offended. He vowed that Cambridge, and Cambridge alone, deserved the honor. He would ask for no help, not from Greenwich or anywhere else. He also wouldn't start right away either.
Stage manager dons the robes of a Cambridge don. Le Verrier enters.
So I have devised 33 equations to quantify the nature of this new planet.
A week or so should be plenty of time. Just need to finish up a few things first.
Now this would give us a mass of 1/9,300 of Earth.
Adams, come here. I need you.
Adams enters.
And this would put its orbit around 217 years.
Yes, sir?
Which would make its distance from the sun about 33.06 astronomical units.
From long have you been working on this problem of Uranus, Adams?
So that would put its longitude perihelion at 284 degrees, 45 seconds.
About 5 years, sir. Why?
And this would put the eccentricity of the planet's orbit at 0.10761. So if we apply that eccentricity to the equation here,
Could you work out some more calculations for me?
that would mean the planet's position on January 1st, 1847 would be 326 degrees, 32 seconds.
Here you are, sir. Just a little something I did quickly.
Therefore, to find out where the planet is now, we work our way backwards from January 1st, 1847.
I've calculated the position of the new planet for every 20th day from July 20 through October 8th. Longitude 325 to 326. That seems to be the place.
Excellent. We'll begin looking tonight. Oh, and Ari wants us to record every star down to the 9th magnitude, but just to be on the safe side, let's record everything down to the 11th magnitude.
Stage manager exits. We hear the sound of rain. Lots and lots of rain. Ari enters.
No, you cannot leave your post simply because it's raining. I don't care if it's been raining for days. Every man at his post. Every man at his post.
Ari exits. Adams and stage manager enters. Stage manager dressed as a Cambridge Dawn.
How's the search going, sir?
Oh, you know how the English weather is. I'm afraid we haven't gotten very far.
Le Verrier enters. Ari dressed in a French beret to signify he is now Arago.
So, Arago, will you be looking for my planet? Will the Paris Observatory be the one to pluck it from the sky for the glory of France?
Your planet? Oh, I'm afraid we can't afford to turn over the entire program to chasing phantom planets, no matter how impressive your calculations might be.
Ari as Arago exits.
39.
As a Cambridge Dawn.
39.
Finally a clear night. Time to turn our eyes to the heavens, men. The hour is upon us. We have navigational charts to make.
Ari exits.
39 what, sir?
That's how many stars we've managed to record.
Oh, is that all?
It's quite a tedious process, I'm afraid. Plus, the weather washes out some nights and the moon washes out others.
Stage manager exits. Ari enters wearing a French beret to signify he is Arago.
But perhaps we could spare a few nights.
Ari as Arago exits.
Thank you, Professor Arago. Thank you.
Ari enters as himself.
At last, success, success, success for the glory of all Britain. Parliament has passed the Railway Gate Act.
Ari exits.
39 isn't many.
A new world within our grasp.
Ari as Arago enters.
I'm sorry, but we need to move on. This search for a new planet is taking too much time.
Ari as Arago exits.
But the new planet, we know it's out there.
Ari enters.
Uniformity, standardization, regulation. This will surely be the most important thing to happen this year.
Ari exits.
I know it's out there.
Ari as Arago enters.
Besides, the Verrier is working on even more refined calculations. Let's let him do the work for now, shall we?
I need more calculations.
Le Verrier exits. Adams exits. Lights down. Lights up. Stage manager enters.
August 31st, 1946. Le Verrier makes another presentation to the French Academy of Sciences.
Le Verrier enters with a flourish. Stage manager calls for applause.
He is greeted as a conquering hero, although the new planet he has predicted has not yet been conquered.
Stage manager calls for more applause. Le Verrier soaks it up. Stage manager cuts off the applause and exits.
Today I present to you my third and, dare I say, final report on Uranus. Or perhaps I should say my report on the soon-to-be-discovered 8th planet of the solar system. The planet we are searching for is located 5 degrees to the east of the star Delta Capricorni. I have calculated that it should appear as a disk of about 3 arcseconds in size. This is a very important point. There is no need to examine all the small stars and their movements. A simple study of each star's appearance should suffice. The new planet should resolve itself as a disk in any good telescope.
Ari enters.
Updates. I need updates. Even though I'm on holiday, I want frequent updates.
Ari exits. Stage manager enters, dressed as a Cambridge Dawn.
We are following your instructions to the letter to examine every star 3 times. Between the time lost to the moon and the weather, I have calculated that at this rate, our observations may take a year.
Stage manager exits.
So, Arago, now that I have told you where to look, when will you begin the search at the Paris Observatory?
Ari enters as Arago.
In due time, my friend, in due time. We do have practical work to be done before we go off chasing theories, so no matter how elegant they are. Did I tell you how much I admired your analytical work, Le Verrier? They tell me you have more than 10,000 pages of calculations. Is that true?
Ari as Arago and Le Verrier exit. Adams enters.
I've made some new calculations on Uranus, or rather the new planet. I've tried a new distance. I found if I work with something just a little closer, then the errors in Uranus's orbit become smaller still. So based on that, I believe that on October 1st, the new planet will be at longitude 330 degrees. That's in Capricorn. I've explained that all here in a letter to the Astronomer Royal. I even included quite a long equation to show him why the radius vector problem goes away. I sure hope he reads this one.
Stage manager enters.
He does not. At that moment, Ari is on holiday in Germany. An ironic location, considering what's to come.
Stage manager exits. Le Verrier enters.
They do nothing. I can't believe them. They just sit there on their hands or something else. I tell them exactly where to look, and is there a single telescope in France tonight that is searching the skies? There is not. It's unfathomable. I would look myself, but I do not own a telescope.
I wish I could just talk to the Astronomer Royal.
Did I not perform these calculations for the glory of France? And now how does France react? They call it a theory and do nothing. I give them every opportunity. I have told them the place to look. I even said that now it is the best time to look before the moon gets in the way. Yet they do not look. Do not blame me if France is not the first to observe this planet.
I suppose I could present a paper at the British Association for the Advancement of Science. I don't think Mr. Airy would object to that, would he? I wouldn't want him to think I was going behind his back or anything.
I cannot even get my paper published here in France. I have no choice but to write the Germans and ask if my report can be published in their journals.
Perhaps if I went to the British Association, I could get someone to actually look for this planet.
The Germans, that's it! Who's that fellow? He wrote me about a year ago, sent me a copy of his dissertation. I thought I might find it useful. I get so many letters. How can I be expected to reply to them all? Now, what did I do with that dissertation?
The British Association says they're not publishing anything on astronomy this year. Next year, maybe.
Ah, here it is. Gailey. That was his name. John Gailey, assistant at the Berlin Observatory. Well, they have a nice instrument. A 9-inch reflector. That should do nicely. That was what was his dissertation on now? Oh, yes, I remember now. Time to ask Gailey for a little favor, I say.
Le Verrier writes out a letter.
Sir, I have read with much interest and attention your analysis of Romier's observations, which you have been kind enough to send me. The perfect clarity of your explanations, the complete roaring of the results which you present are on a par with those which we should expect from the most able astronomer. There, a little flattery, that should grease those wheels.
They ask if I have anything on geology.
Adams exits.
All right, time to cut to the chase. Right now, I would like to find a precedented observer who will be willing to devote some time to an examination of a part of the sky in which there may be a new planet to discover. If France does not want my new planet, then the Germans shall have it.
Le Verrier exits. Stage manager enters.
September 23rd, 1846, the Berlin Observatory. Johann Galle receives a letter from Le Verrier. Now we need to explain the hierarchy here. Galle was the youthful assistant to the director, Johann Encke. And now this assistant had just received a letter from one of the most celebrated scientific minds in the world. This was not the usual order of things. And that celebrated scientific mind had just asked this assistant for help on a special project. This was definitely not the usual order of things.
Harry enters. Stage manager hands him a costume to make him German.
Now imagine how George Airy might have responded if one of his underlings had received such a letter.
All the actors now playing Germans speak in a German accent.
He wants you to help look for his planet. And with whose telescope?
Now imagine how John Couch Adams might have responded if he'd been only a little more outgoing.
Le Verrier enters. Stage manager hands him a costume to make him German.
But sir, Professor Le Verrier says there may be a new planet. He says instructions on where to find it.
Galle, our telescope is reserved for more important things than peering at every star in the heavens to see if it moves.
Now imagine that Le Verrier is skilled enough to know how to butter up the boss, because you don't have to imagine that.
But sir, Professor Le Verrier says to give you his greetings.
He does he? Let me see that.
Encke takes the letter from Galle.
Will you convey to Mr. Encke my compliments and deep respect? See, his deep respect.
So, this French astronomer writes a letter to you, an assistant at the Berlin Observatory, and asks you a favor that would require the use of our telescope. And the only acknowledgement that I happen to be the director of this observatory and might have something to say about how my equipment is used and how my associates spend their time is in a postscript.
He did send his deep respect.
An afterthought, I'm sure. Well, gentlemen, I have had quite enough of this. Today is my birthday. I shall be going home tonight.
So can we look for Le Verrier's planet? He tells us exactly where to look. With a position this precise, it shouldn't take long to sweep that part of the sky. And he says the planet should have a visible disk. So we won't have to look at each star. Just a quick glance, then move on. I promise we'd go right back to our regular program of observations.
Now imagine there's an even more eager astronomy student, an intern essentially, hanging out looking for some way to help.
Adams enters. Stage manager hands him a costume to make him German.
Heinrich d'Arrest.
I could help.
Darek? Who invited you to this conversation?
Oh, I'm sorry. I just overheard you talking about whether Gale could look for Leverrier's planet. I could help him. That would speed things along.
Now imagine that Enki isn't quite like Airy.
Very well. Just make sure you make all your required observations tonight. If you have any time left for idle stargazing, that's up to you. Good evening.
Enki exits.
Happy birthday, sir.
So, let's get started.
Things do not go well.
Gale is looking through the telescope. Darest is looking over his shoulder.
I don't see anything. Nothing with a visible disk anyway.
He could be wrong about it having a visible disk.
That's true. But in this case, we're just looking for another star. So how would we even know which one it is?
Perhaps we could use a star chart?
A star chart. But we're looking for something that's not going to be on a star chart.
Exactly. If we had a chart, we could look at that part of the sky, and if the star is on the star chart, then we know right away it's not the planet. But if we find one that's not on the chart, then we know it might be the planet. That way we'd find it even if it wasn't enough to show a visible disk.
I don't know. Most star charts are pretty incomplete. We could spot a lot of uncharted stars if they are really just stars.
True, but it might still speed things up.
I suppose. See what you can find over there in the closet.
Darest goes to the closet.
Oh, what a mess.
And now imagine that Enki is not like Airy in another way.
Anki's not a big believer in strong things or in storing things in order, I'm afraid. You might have to do some digging.
Adams, as Darest, excavates the closet.
There are charts here going back to the 1700s.
I told you he wasn't much of on a filing system.
After more rummaging,
I can find some volumes from the new ones, but not all.
Keep looking.
Volume 21. This might be the one. Ah, this is the one.
Here, why don't you sit at the desk? I'll call them out as I see them, and you can check them against the atlas.
Here's the page we want.
Ready?
Darest takes a seat at the desk while Gale resumes looking through the telescope.
Ready.
That night in England, the astronomers at Cambridge Observatory were also looking in Capricorn. They also debated whether to abandon Airy's mandate and adopt a quicker system for checking each point of light. They decided to give it a few more nights before they switched. But in Berlin...
Yes, that one's on the map too. Next.
This was a good idea, Henri. This is going pretty fast.
What's the next one?
All right, next. Right ascension, 22 hours, 53 minutes, 25 seconds, 84. I see a star of about 8th magnitude.
Could you repeat that?
22 hours, 53 minutes, 25 seconds, 84.
That star is not on the map.
What? Are you sure?
I'm quite sure. You said
22
hours, 53 minutes, 25 seconds, 84.
I better check the coordinates again. Yes, the ones I said are right.
And it's still not on the map. Does it have a disk? Verrier said it would have a disk, right?
I can't tell. It's very faint. Here, you have a look. Do you see it there, in the lower corner?
Darest takes a look through the telescope.
Oh, I see it, but I can't tell either. If you squint at it, it seems to resolve into a disk, but either way, it's not on the map.
You better get Henri.
Oh, it's practically midnight. Are you sure we should wake him?
Whatever this is, it will probably set about 2:30, and he'll want to see it. Better get Henri.
Darest exits. Stage manager enters.
That night in England, the skies are perfectly clear. The Cambridge astronomers continued their methodical census of the stars, but they didn't see this one.
Gares enters with Enki.
Oops. This had better be the real thing, Gare.
I think it is. I've been tracking it for an hour now. I think it's moving relative to the background stars.
Moving, you say?
Very slowly, I think. We'll have to look again tomorrow night to confirm anything, but we thought you should know tonight.
Here's another way Enki was different from Eri. Enki didn't mind the interruption as much.
Does it have a disc? The Verrier said it would have a disc.
We think it has a disc.
You think? Here, let me have a look.
Enki peers through the telescope.
Also, Enki looked through his telescope, something Eri never did.
All I see is a speck of light. If you squint, it has a disc. If you squint, you can see lots of things. I grant you this much, though. It's certainly not on the map. You'll have to take a look at it tomorrow. Good night, gentlemen. Don't forget to make your regular observations.
Enki exits.
The next evening, September 24th, 1846, the staff of the Berlin Observatory waits for darkness to fall. History is in the air, and the night can't come quick enough.
Is it dark enough yet?
You've been asking that question all day, Kalle.
Well, is it?
Here's another difference between Enki and Eri.
If I say no, you'll just keep asking it. All right, I suppose it is. Let's try to find this object of yours from last night.
Gale goes to the telescope.
You're still not willing to call it a planet, are you?
When we have proof, I'm willing to believe.
Do you have it in view yet?
No,
What do you mean, no?
it's not there.
What do you mean it's not there?
It's moved.
Moved?
By how much?
Here, write down the coordinates. Longitude, 325 degrees.
325 degrees.
52 minutes, 45 seconds.
52 minutes, 45 seconds.
Compare that to how we recorded last night.
It's precisely the change Verrier predicted.
Can you make out a disc?
I can make out a small one.
How big of a disc?
I'm measuring the disk at about 2.6 arc seconds.
Verrier predicted it would have a disk of 3 arc seconds.
Let me see.
Enki looks through the telescope.
Oh, what do you see?
I see a disc.
Gale and Dares cheer.
Gentlemen, my congratulations. I think you've discovered the Verrier's planet after all.
The three shake hands.
We should let him know.
Gentlemen, we should let the world know.
More shouting and celebration and congratulations. Stage manager enters, waving a German flag, and calls on audience member with a German flag to fly it. In time, the celebration dies down. Gale, Enki, and Dares exit. Lights down, lights up. Stage manager enters.
5 days later, September 29th, 1846, a copy of the Verrier's final report arrives at the Cambridge Observatory nearly a month after it was delivered. The mail from Paris must be exceedingly slow. Challis sees that Verrier predicts the new planet will have a visible disk. Adams had predicted that earlier, but somehow Verrier's prediction carries more weight. Challis vows to abandon Aries' order and look only for points of light that can be resolved into a disk. That same day, Eri arrives at his holiday destination in Germany.
Eri enters. Stage manager puts on a costume to assume the role of a German porter.
Ah, Professor Eri, welcome to Gotha. I trust you're having an enjoyable holiday.
Yes, yes, the weather's very nice this time of year.
Yes, the weather is wonderful. Very clear skies. That's what helped them discover the new planet the other night.
A new planet?
Oh, yes, they discovered the new planet. Haven't you heard? It's in all the papers. Some astronomers in Berlin. Apparently, a Frenchman told them where to look. Can you believe that? Being able to predict where a new planet might be? We certainly live in extraordinary times. Well, come along. You must be tired. I'll get your bags.
Stage manager picks up Aries' bags and exits.
A new planet? Oh, no.
Aries exits. Stage manager enters.
That night at Cambridge, the English astronomers spotted some light in Capricorn, just west of Delta Capricorni. It seemed to have a disk. But rather than check it with a higher magnification, they decided to wait until the next night to see if it had moved.
Stage manager exits. Aries enters.
Oh, this is dreadful, just dreadful. There'll be recriminations, excuses, maybe even investigations. Chalice, that damned Chalice. I told him to look for it. Or maybe he's found something and the news just hasn't made its way across the channel. Oh, for the sake of England, let's hope.
Aries exits. Stage manager enters.
The next night, September 30th, Chalice entertains a visitor, a local minister. Tea runs late. By the time tea is done, the moon is up, too late to check out that faint light spot of light, which may or may not have a disk.
Stage manager exits. Aries enters.
I'll have to find a way to explain this. How was I to know that schoolboy's scribblings actually meant anything? You think they'll blame me for not acting fast enough? Well, they couldn't. They shouldn't. They wouldn't. Oh, but they would. They would, the fools. They have no idea what it's like to run a proper observatory these days.
Aries exits. Stage manager enters as a newsboy hawking newspapers.
Extra, extra, read all about it. New planet discovered.
Stage manager exits. Le Verrier enters.
Janus? Gale proposes to name the planet Janus? Oh, no. The name Janus will never do. What was he? The god of gates and doors? The god of boundaries? Oh no. Highly inappropriate.
Stage manager enters.
In Cambridge, the defeated Englishmen decided to review all their observations to see if they'd never found the new planet. If they'd never found the new planet and not recognized. You can guess where this is going.
Stage manager puts on the robes of a Cambridge Dawn.
The name Janus would imply that this is the last planet in our solar system, and we have no reason to believe that at all.
No, not that one either. Nothing there.
By tradition, it is the right of the discoverer to name a new object, and I am the rightful discoverer of this new world.
But this one on August 12th. Wait, oh God, no, it wasn't there on July 30th.
The French Bureau of Longitude has decided on the name Neptune. Or it will as soon as I tell it to them.
Oh no, we had it and we didn't know it.
Brother of Jupiter, the great god of the sea. A very proper and important name.
And here it is again, we had it twice.
Adams enters.
Excuse me, but do you have the coordinates?
We had it twice in our first 4 days of observations. How could we miss it each time?
Perhaps now I can compute a more precise orbit for this new planet.
Oh, John, I'm so sorry. We failed you. You must do something to claim a share of the credit at least. How can you sit idle by while the French are running off with all the glory?
Oh, but I'm not sitting idly by. I'm working quite hard, I assure you. So if we take the observation since Gale's announcements, and then the observations you made, we can plot them like this. It's all quite fascinating.
Adams exits. Stage manager takes off the robe of the Cambridge Dawn.
October 5th, 1846, the weekly meeting of the French Academy. But this is a meeting like no other.
Adams and the stage manager enter, dressed as Frenchmen.
Is he here yet? I can't see.
I don't think I've ever seen the streets this full.
Do you think he'll come in the front or will they bring him in around the back?
They say it will be standing room only.
I don't mind standing if I can see him. I've been standing all morning.
Let's try the other way. Come on.
Adams, as Frenchman, and stage manager exit. Just before the stage manager exits, she removes his beret and momentarily resumes his narrator role.
Everyone wants a glimpse of the great Verrier.
Stage manager exits. Verrier enters quietly, without flourish, from the back of the theater.
Arago, I must speak to you.
Harry enters with French beret to signify he is Arago.
Ah, our great new national hero. Your Neptune is the old nation above, the old world even.
Yes, I know. That's what I need to speak to you about. The name Neptune, it will never do.
But it's the name you proposed.
Yes. Never mind about that now. Here's what I think we should do. Do you remember when the last planet was discovered? The names proposed then?
Herschel wanted to name it after King George, as if the planet belonged to the British.
No, after that. The other name.
Herschel's planet.
Exactly. The name our new land proposed. The same naming convention that we use for those who discover comets. Halley's Comet, Faye's Comet, De Vico's Comet. Do you understand me, Arago?
Oui, I do indeed.
So I think you should propose the name. It's French discovery, and you are the head of the most important observatory in France.
I completely agree, Urbain. Now go, get ready backstage. The crowd is getting restless. They all want to see you. I'll give you an introduction like you've never had before. Go.
Right. Thank you, sir. I'm indebted to you, sir.
Verrier exits. The stage manager, Adams, enters, still dressed as a Frenchman.
Verrier.
Stage manager signals for the audience to wave their French flags and start chanting.
Verrier!
Adams and stage manager exit. Harry and Arago continues the chant, then cuts it off.
Gentlemen, welcome to this week's meeting of the Academy. I see we have quite a crowd in the gallery today. Thank you for joining us today on such a momentous occasion, not just for France, but for all of science.
Stage manager enters and signals for all of those with French flags to wave them. Stage manager exits.
But we have more to announce today than the addition of a new planet to our solar system. There is the matter of what we shall call this new world. I have received from Monsieur Le Verrier a most flattering invitation, the privilege of naming this new planet.
Adams and stage manager enter as Frenchmen.
Verrier.
Is it right that we should name comets after those who first described them, yet the name of one who first demonstrated the existence of a new planet should not have his name written in the heavens as well? No. It offends reason and the most common principles of justice. So, I tell you today, my friends, I pledge never to call the new planet by any other name than by that of Le Verrier's planet.
Verrier.
They encourage the audience to chant as well and wave French flags. Adams and stage manager exit.
We should be absolutely consistent. Herschel will dethrone Uranus. The same for asteroids. Ceres shall be known as Piazzi, Pallas as Olbers, Juno as Harding, and so forth. It is never too late to tear off the swaddling clothes of habit. The Verrier's planet it shall be.
Le Verrier! Le Verrier! Le Verrier!
They encourage the audience to chant as well as wave French flags. Stage manager Adams and Airy exit. Le Verrier enters.
Quick, get word to the printer. My collected papers. Tell the printer to change the title from Research into the Movements of the Planet Uranus to Research into the Movements of the Planet Herschel. And have him change all references from Uranus to Herschel. Consistency. Absolute consistency.
Le Verrier exits. Stage manager enters.
At Cambridge, Chalice sent off 2 letters. The first went to Airy.
Airy enters.
An apology. As if that will set things right.
The second went to Arago.
Airy puts on a French beret to become Arago.
He says he found the planet before we did. Twice. Then why didn't they say so? The English, they're trying to steal our planet from us.
Airy removes the beret to become himself again.
I suppose I must send a letter to Le Verrier as well. I shall congratulate him. I shall also tell him we knew where the planet was before the French did.
Airy puts the beret back on to become Arago again.
The English are definitely trying to steal our planet from us.
Le Verrier enters with a newspaper.
Have you seen this?
I have.
The English are trying to steal my planet.
The English are not to be trusted.
They say they knew about the planet in July.
If this is true, the English kept all this secret,
Someone named Adams.
hoping to win all the glory for themselves.
Who is this Adams? I've never heard of him.
While you announced your results for the whole world to know.
No one's ever heard of him.
Either that, or Harry is simply making all this up after the fact to cover up for his own incompetence.
I shall write the devil himself and demand he clear my name in England. And this Adams fellow, this scheming, secretive cheat, he can prove nothing. He deserves nothing. This planet is mine, all mine.
Oh, and here's a letter from Chalice at Cambridge.
The conspiracy spreads. It stinks worse than a cheese. I can smell it all the way here across the English Channel.
What does he say?
He sends his congratulations.
As any proper gentleman of science should.
Yet in the London papers, he claims this Adams fellow predicted the new planet in 1843.
What? Well, that was 3 years ago.
3 years and not a peep? And yet they admit they did not begin the search until this summer, after my second report. So they either did not believe this Adams fellow then, or they're simply making it all up now.
Not only do they think that the sun doesn't set on the British Empire, they think the sun revolves around them. They cannot stand the thought of anyone else winning even the slightest bit of glory.
Oh, this is the most transparent conspiracy of all time. The English lie like dogs. Dogs, I tell you.
They don't just want to rule this world, they want to rule all the others as well.
And look at this. It gets even more ridiculous.
Airy, as Arago, takes the letter.
He has the gall to propose a name for the planet.
The planet is not theirs to name.
We think at Cambridge that Oceanus would be a good name for the planet.
Oceanos? Because Britain supposedly rules the waves? Preposterous! Absolutely preposterous! We should give those scoundrels the same kind of hiding that a schoolmaster would to a cheating schoolboy.
Le Verrier exits. Airy, as Arago, exits. Stage manager enters.
October 19th, 1846. The French Academy meets again. And this time, the mood isn't so celebratory. It's confrontational. Arago takes apart the British claim to the new planet the way a prosecutor would at a trial. He takes on Airy.
Airy, with French beret, enters as Arago. Le Verrier enters. Adams enters as a random Frenchman. Stage manager also puts on a costume of a random Frenchman in attendance.
So, we begin with Georges Airy, one of our most learned contemporaries in the theory of celestial mechanics. Yet, he supposedly had dismissed Mr. Adams' calculations since last year, and we now learn did nothing to act on them. So clearly he did not believe them then. What does that tell us about Airy's claims now?
It tells us he's not the expert he thinks he is.
Or it tells us he's trying to cover his you-know-what.
And then we come to Chalice. He writes Le Verrier to offer his congratulations and makes no mention of any other calculations. Yet, he writes a London newspaper and claims this Adams predicted this blue planet 3 years ago. And that's what made him search for it this summer. So, which is it?
He's being dishonest.
And if he is not dishonest, he is incompetent.
And then finally, we come to Adams himself. Nowhere is there any mention of any publication of his work. This circumstance alone suffices to end the debate. There exists only one rational and just one way to write the history of science. It is to rely exclusively upon publications bearing a definite date, abandoning that all is confusion.
Yeah.
The Verrier is called upon today to share the glory so loyally, so rightly earned, with a young man who communicated nothing to the public and whose calculations are totally unknown to the observatories of Europe. No. The Friends of Science will not allow such a crying injustice to be perpetrated.
Yeah.
Mr. Adams has no right to figure in the history of the discovery of the planet Le Verrier. Neither by a detailed citation, nor by the slightest allusion. None at all, none whatsoever.
Yeah.
Le Verrier.
Verrier.
The chant repeats. Stage manager signals for audience to chant along and wave French flags. Le Verrier soaks up the adulation. Adams, as a random Frenchman, and Airy as Arago, pick up Le Verrier and carry him off stage, while stage manager calls for prolonged chanting. Once Le Verrier is off stage manager calls for the chanting to cease. Stage manager takes off the French beret.
November 13th, 1846. The Royal Astronomical Society in London. Here the mood is quite different.
Airy enters. Adams and Le Verrier enter, both dressed in wigs, to denote they are random British members of the society. Stage manager exits.
Good day. It is an honor to be here with you today. It's good to see so many people taking an interest in our particular science, which I see has been somewhat in the news of late. It is now my honor to present to you my paper, An Account of Some Circumstances Historically Connected with the Discovery of the Planet Exterior to Uranus.
Some of the circumstances. I suspect that means we won't get the full story.
And so you see, I did not reply to Le Verrier's letter this summer because my approaching departure for the continent made it useless for me to trouble Monsieur Le Verrier with a request for the more accurate calculations to which he alluded.
Approaching departure, he had 6 weeks before he was scheduled to leave.
Of course, he didn't reply to Le Verrier. He didn't want Le Verrier's calculations because he already had Adams, and Le Verrier had just given him confirmation that they were right after all.
So he used this time to authorize a secret search.
A secret search that failed.
Because of incompetence.
Harry had been sitting on Adams' numbers for what, a year or more?
His excuse is that Adams' work wasn't published, so therefore couldn't be trusted.
Oh, so now it's Adam's fault for not publishing his work.
So let me get this straight. Adams takes his calculations directly to the Astronomer Royal, who dismisses them because they're not published.
So it's Adam's fault.
Or Chalice for not getting them published.
Anybody but Ares.
So why didn't Airy publish them then?
As Astronomer Royal, he could have.
Oh, as Astronomer Royal, he could have done lots of things.
And so with that, I thank you for your time.
Here comes Chalice. Let's see how he explains himself.
Stage manager enters with a robe of a Cambridge dawn.
An account of observations at the Cambridge Observatory for detecting the planet to Uranus.
Oh, they say Chalice had Adams' work for more than a year and did nothing with it.
Didn't once turn a telescope to the sky.
Didn't once publicize it.
Didn't even study the numbers.
He may be a bigger villain in all this than Airy.
How is that possible?
Adams was a stranger to Airy. You can figure him for ignoring a stranger, but Chalice knew Adams and should have had more faith in his work. That's why his was the bigger failure.
And so it was such a novel thing to undertake observations purely based on theoretical deductions, and while much labor was certain, success appeared very doubtful.
The Germans didn't put a lot of labor into their search, now did they? What was it, a few hours?
In addition, I was making a grand effort to catalogue the vast number of comet observations which I have accumulated, and this occupied the whole of my time.
So he's saying he was too busy?
A grand effort. A grand effort indeed. On comets.
Adams and Le Verrier, as British, start booing Chalice. Stage manager enters.
A pitiful story,
A feeble excuse.
but probably true. Who would dream of making such a shameful story about themselves?
Adams and Le Verrier, as British, resume their boos and catcalls. Stage manager in a wig enters.
Shh, here comes Adams.
Adams abandons his wig to become Adams again.
It's Adams.
Adams! Adams! Adams!
Adams!
Adams! Adams!
Stage manager signals for audience to join and wave British flags. In time, stage manager signals for audience to cease the chanting and the waving.
Why are they so fascinated with that young man? He hasn't said a thing yet.
Perhaps that's why.
Well, he's certainly got a lot to answer for. His absolute inaction stretching over several years.
Shh, he's explaining his methods.
And so that is how I arrived at my calculations.
Remarkable.
His approach is quite different from Le Verrier's, but certainly seems well-grounded.
Those were no schoolboy scribblings. Airy must have been a fool to ignore them.
Chalice, too.
Now, as for the question of priority,
Shh.
I cheerfully acknowledge Professor Le Verrier's just claims to the honors of the discovery, for there is no doubt that his researches were first published to the world and led to the actual discovery of the planet by Dr. Galley.
Remarkable.
He declares Le Verrier the sole discoverer.
Abandons his own claims?
He may be the only English to show any class in this whole sorry affair.
Adams!
Adams!
Ooh.
They continue chanting. The stage manager signals for the audience to wave British flags and join in the chanting. In time, stage manager signals for all of this to cease. Adams approaches Airy and hands him a letter.
What's this?
An apology, sir.
You want an apology from me?
No, sir. I owe one to you.
For what?
For not replying to your inquiry about the radius factor. I did not realize the importance you attached to that point. Good day, sir.
Adams exits.
Remarkable.
It's still to be seen how remarkable he is. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have an observatory to run. The Queen's fleet must not be delayed for want of navigational charts. A new planet won't do much to speed the shipping, now will it?
Airy exits. Le Verrier, as British, and stage manager resume chanting.
Adam!
Adams!
Adam!
Adams!
Adam!
Le Verrier as British and stage manager exit. Lights down. Lights up. Le Verrier and Airy as Arago enter.
Oh, good news, Le Verrier. The English plot has failed. The planet Le Verrier belongs to you and you alone.
Then why do they not call it by its rightful name?
It is because they are jealous of the French.
Then they deny the English their planet Herschel.
France will stand for Le Verrier. Unfortunately, we may have to stand alone. The Russians have decided to recognize the name Neptune. The Germans too.
Neptune? I find it a distasteful name.
They say mythology is neutral ground. Just think how awkward it would be if the next planet should be discovered by Boguslavsky.
Neptune. I find the name revolting.
It will be your planet in the history books, Le Verrier. Have no fear of that.
Le Verrier and Airy as Arago exit. Stage manager enters.
Cambridge in the months following.
Stage manager puts on a robe of a Cambridge dawn and calls out the others unseen.
Here he comes, get ready.
Adams enters.
What's this?
We have a little surprise for you, John.
A surprise? What kind of surprise?
Several, actually. Are you ready?
I'm not sure.
Well, the Imperial Academy of Sciences in St. Petersburg has studied your calculations and considers them equal to those of Le Verrier.
Oh?
And the Danish astronomer Peter Hensen writes he considers your calculations superior to those of Le Verrier. More elegant, he calls them.
Oh, that's very nice.
It will be slow going, I'm afraid, but as more astronomers read your paper, I'm sure more will come to recognize you as the true discoverer of Neptune.
So you've called me here to read letters to me.
Oh, those were just the preliminaries.
Preliminaries to what?
This one,
Oh, what's this? It has the royal seal on it.
as it should.
It's from the Queen.
Victoria herself. Go ahead, open it.
Adams reads the letter.
So, Sir John,
Oh, dear.
what do you think?
She's offering me a knighthood.
You may not be one to speak up for yourself, but some of your friends have spoken up for you.
I'm very honored.
Obviously, the Queen cares more about the heavens than just speeding along her shipping.
But I can't accept it.
What?
Well, for one thing, I can't afford it.
This is an honor, John, from the Queen. It's freely bestowed.
But I'm a teacher. Once this Neptune matter is settled, I'll still be a teacher. It wouldn't look good to have a knight dependent on tuition payments from students, now would it?
But, John, you're a national hero. Don't worry about how you pay your bills.
And if I wanted to get married, well, I'd have to keep up appearances. You can't have a knight's lady taking in washing, now can you?
John, you're the discoverer of the heavens, not a beggar. Even if you were, this discovery will change your circumstances more than you can ever guess.
Perhaps, but I'm still a farmer's son and always shall be. I'm sorry, I can't accept this.
You're turning down a knighthood.
I suppose I am.
Adams exits.
Remarkable.
Le Verrier enters.
Remarkable indeed.
Airy enters.
If you say so.
Le Verrier and Airy exit.
And so the saga of Neptune passed into history. Le Verrier was showered with praise and honors the rest of his days. He was elected to the Legislative Assembly, eventually appointed Arago's successor as the director of the Paris Observatory.
Le Verrier enters.
We shall embark upon a grand program to recalculate the orbits of all the planets.
He also proved himself as much a tyrannical administrator as, dare we say...
Airy enters.
Every man at his post. I don't care if it's raining.
Airy exits.
George Airy.
Henceforth, no staff members shall have their names published in conjugation with the discoveries at the observatory.
Perhaps he remembered how he went behind Arago's back to get the Germans to look for his planet.
They all take place under my direction.
Le Verrier considered his staff little more than workmen, collecting data necessary for his vast calculations.
Numbers. I need more numbers.
Some say he never even bothered to look at Neptune. The Verrier seemed to have very little interest in the planets themselves.
Are they inhabited? Might there be other planets around other suns? What strange lights might shine on the planet of the double star? These are fascinating fantasies. Astronomy is formula, mathematics, not mythology.
By 1870, the staff of the Paris Observatory had had enough. They threatened to go on strike.
How dare they?
Le Verrier was fired.
Merde!
Le Verrier moves towards the exit.
Ça me fait cher.
Le Verrier exits.
John Couch Adams, true to his word, remained a teacher the rest of his career.
Adams enters.
Our lesson today is about Isaac Newton.
When George Airy finally retired, Adams was offered the post of Astronomer Royal.
Oh, I couldn't accept that. Let a younger man have the opportunity. Besides, I'd have to give up my teaching, and I wouldn't want to do that.
Adams exits.
Le Verrier and Adams went into the history books together, both enterprising explorers who used mathematics to force the night sky to yield up one of its many secrets. The calculations that led Le Verrier and Adams to Neptune inspired an entire generation of mathematicians who searched for the single perfect equation by which the mysteries of the universe could be explained. One of those mathematicians they inspired even solved the problem that the great Le Verrier could not. That old problem of the orbit of Mercury. A German fellow figured it out. His name was Einstein, and the answer was relativity.
Stage manager exits. The end.
All right, well, thank you all.
Whew. There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.